for our design forum with Connie Tanaka, Michelle Gaynor, Doc Butler, and Richard McKinley. So we'll be getting started and really look forward to a fun evening.
Hello, good evening. I'm Connie Tanaka. I'm an interior designer here in the South Bay. And I'm just really excited to be here and talk about one of my favorite topics is art. I have an art background and I lived in Tokyo and did art brokerage and actually did a little showing that I didn't persevere. But I love the process of making art and now being able to use it in my clients' homes.
That's wonderful. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. Michelle Gaynor. I'm an architect here in the South Bay. I've been practicing for over 25 years, and I leave it at 25. More than that. And raised here locally in Torrance. Went to SCI-Arc, the Southern California Institute of Architecture, and I've been licensed since '93. Mostly residential, I do, and I'm also a somewhat frustrated artist. I started out my early career as a graphic artist, and hence the, kind of wanted to do something a little bit more three-dimensionally. So I flipped through a college catalog and saw architecture under A. It's not like I grew up thinking, oh, I gotta build things, you know. And I really like it. It combines my scientific need to be precise with my artistic. So it's a nice mixture. Thank you.
My name is Dot Butler. Dottie, as my dad named me, so it can only shorten to Dot. But and I do interior design and architectural design in my projects. Something different about you know, an artist that you've connected with, that it resonates with you. So I really try to help clients find artists, introduce them to artists, curate a collection of artists that they will resonate with, and then create gallery spaces in the home so that it doesn't all have to look like one style of art. You know, that you could bring Linda Thompson paired with the Jean Cummings. If those speak to you in different, you know, moods, that the house can envelop that. But it doesn't all have to be all modern. It doesn't all have to be landscape. You know, that there's a space, and you can create that tension in rooms to facilitate a lot of different genres of art. I think if you handle it right, or you know, create a long hallway it's a gallery. So yeah, I'm very passionate about people being connected with their environment and feeling like it's a personal reflection of, you know, something that they're passionate about. So.
These are lovely words to most of us who paint, because quite often, you know, sometimes you end up with the architect wanting to be the artist and just filling it basically with decoration. And it's a wonderful marriage between the two. You know, I mean, architecture is an art in itself, as is the design elements of choosing the colors and the textures and the rugs. Even I went through an experience with that in my own home in the collection of art I have there, and wanting some very fine and expensive Asian carpets, and they brought beautiful carpets, and there was nothing on the wall at the time. And you were laying them out, and we were oohing and eyeing, and she, oh, you should have this one and this one. And I said, except I know what's going on the wall.
Right.
And that's not going to fit. And it also speaks to, you know, the semantics between art and decoration in art. And that's when those things come and go. You know, people fall into trends, and there's a certain glitz, and there's certain stables of galleries that will represent that type of work, and everybody jumps on that bandwagon, as we do. I mean, that's human nature, and being sold certain things.
You know, my job is to steer my client into, you know, what they're looking for, but to keep them in the style that they are going with. So whether it be the windows, when we talked about design, whether it's the windows or the doors or the moldings or even the way the floor plan is, is dependent on the style. Now, here in Torrance, it's always, or in the South Bay, it's hard when stucco and it's square and it's stucco and that's how it starts out. And then they envision whether it's a Hampton beach house, or I had a client who wanted a Southwestern, and I had to shut that one down. Because I said, you know, the adobe look with the round, it just doesn't, but Spanish is,
We can do. Yeah.
we can do. And that's my soul there, is the old Spanish, the tile roofs, the thick walls, the white plaster. And so when you have a style, I'm never married to a style of art or even furniture, a good designer, because I'm not going to claim that I could choose the art or the design. But creating the space, so if my client has a painting that they want somewhere, my design is to make sure that direct sunlight does not come in and hit that wall, and you know, how is the lighting going to be, how do you perceive it when you walk in. You don't want it to be, you know, when you walk into the room, it needs to be what you see. And so I steer my client not only to think about the type of building that they're in, but to think about, you know, like you said, what appeals to you, and
Yeah, and I would say I do a lot of research. As I get to know the client, I do research in terms of what kind of artists to expose them to that I think they would resonate with, as you've spent a lot of time, and also to new things that I envision would make the space come alive, that might push them past their expertise or their experience in art.
Comfort zone.
Comfort zone, right, that's the word I'm looking for. And so they, but as they, for me, at least in my process with clients, it's really just a process of educating them on how to look at details, how to push their comfort zone, how to be observant about why this makes this work, what's beautiful about this, what makes them happy when they look at this, whether it's necessarily their style or not.
Yeah, I think I take two approaches to that, because sometimes I want the art piece to be the wow factor, and then it has to be really unique. Like, you've never seen anything like it.
Right.
But you can't put something like that in every single place, because it dominates the whole space. So
Right.
there's an appropriate time for both, but I am on the hunt for both types. As far as the question of that was the question that I was asking myself this whole week, thinking about this, because as someone who wants to be introduced to artists, but what's hard for me is I have to have the type of art that works for that particular project. And then all of a sudden that universe gets real narrow.
Right, right.
And then, but when I go to another project, of course, now we're working with something very different.
I've gone to, there's the interior design and home industry shows like High Point and Atlanta and different ones in Vegas, and a lot of times they have kind of the commodity art places, but then sometimes they'll have a smaller group that's representing artists like you all, that when I stumble upon them, I take all of their information and I, look through their work. So it's one of these, we're on the quest, and I think I also look for sites that have like modern art, it's finding the right tagline to find kind of what you're after. And oftentimes when you're hunting the internet to stumble on the right artists, but anymore, I remember before internet, we lived in Albuquerque, and I would make the trek to Santa Fe to go through all the artists, all the galleries, just trying to expose myself and educate myself on fine art. I didn't grow up in, New York or a metropolitan place that I was exposed to really high art. So I just feel like every time I get exposed to high art, I'm elevated, to a level. And so So though, in those days, that was the only way you really got to see it. You either went to a museum or you went to galleries, and there are some towns that are famous for having lots of galleries, and now, you know, as we get so busy with our projects, we have to rely online, you know,
But it's good to go down to the art shows and
it is, right.
And then I come home with a stack and then I'm overwhelmed.
Right. Who was that one that did that? And, yeah.
You have to be true to yourself. You know, and it's like I tend to work small. I mean, I've done a few large monumental pieces and things, but it's just not who I am. It's probably being a myopic child. So the artist, and that's what I meant about aging, you start embracing that this is who I am. So my best galleries will say to somebody, they go, oh, why don't we group these 4 or 5 together? You know, I've been very blessed to have a lawyer in Philadelphia that has 34 of my paintings. And every year, you know, and I go, how can you have that many? He goes, you don't paint that large. You know, and the interesting thing, and I don't mean this in any condemning way, because we're all influenced by the environment around us. I mean, we know that from marketing. You know, it's why we want to buy certain cars and wear certain labels and wear our hair a certain way and things. And the color trends, it's always chicken and egg. You know, what comes first? Is it really that somebody decides to move in this direction and everybody else jumps on board? You know, or are we constantly following the guide of, you know, because you used to get the book, these are the hot colors. Who decided this, you know? I mean, you know, somebody in Milan or something? I don't know. So it's interesting, you know, around that aspect of, and all I can say to that in conclusion is I just don't pay attention to it. And that's hard because you see it like when red paintings 20 years ago, up until about 10 years ago, it was very popular. Tuscan red, big, bright red paintings in bright gold brassy, you know, and everybody's selling and you'd be at shows and they were all doing really well and people were designing around it and they were doing the more earthy Spanish look. And I'm not going to sell real well for them here. But as an artist, I would say you've got to find your market sometimes too. You know, to try to like you loving, you know, what I've heard, the traditional and you know, you must have a lot of Southwest flair with your background. And I love those places and love that environment too. But if you love Spanish colonial homes, I wouldn't recommend Maine as where you want to market yourself. You know, and I find artists all the time that just go, this is what I love to do, and I go, you're marketing in the wrong place. That's why you're dealing with this level of non-success. And the same with color. You know, I mean, certain places, California is, you know, I live in Oregon, fortunately on the border with California, because you go north, it gets a lot brighter.
Or you go like Miami, and where can you paint an aqua or a pink room? Only in Florida. You can get away with those
Yeah.
You see that in presentation of the artwork too.
And I love that Art Deco of that era, and that belongs there. Right.
It's true.
Right.
You gotta find your tribe.
Right, but I think, you know, as what you were saying, as we practice our craft, we do find a comfort space, and we excel at that. So I wouldn't discourage anybody from that. It's just finding the connection, finding the, and what you talked about, icy paintings, and they're of the desert. My mother has a beautiful collection of desert paintings. She's in Palm Springs.
Yeah.
They work there,
Yeah.
you know. She has this ocean painting that I just can't wait to get rid of, you know. I just, doesn't do anything for me there.
Right.
But sometimes it's so ocean paintings, beach paintings, pier paintings, those do well. Those